Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. When scientists go to do their experiments, go to do their work, they go to a laboratory. And in that laboratory, they have the equipment that they need in order to work on whatever it is they're working on. Each of us has to find a place to do our work. And what is our most important work? What is that which should be at the forefront of what we're trying to accomplish? Well, we were created by Allah so that Allah would have a creation that knew him and one that he could know. So we were created with this intention. We were given 96 qualities. No other creation has this many qualities. We were given Allah's qualities to be able to have them within us. No other creation was giving that to the extent that man was given that. We have the nur within us and the ability to contact the nur within us. No other creation was given that to the extent that man was given that. And where is the place, the laboratory, for us to find that God within us that we are to commune with, to find that space where we can transcend this connection to the world and enter into our communion with reality, our communion with that which is everlasting, our communion with eternity. Where is that place? Well, that place is right here. And when is that place? That place is right now. So right now, right here is the time and place for us to enter into communion. Usually it's called meditation. And what is meditation about? Well, there's lots of different methodologies that different religions, different groups promote meditation. But I'll try and give you one example of what I think is an important practice for each of us to have. There was a man who was born on an island, and his family had lived on that island for years and years, and it was a happy place, and generations lived there. And now this man had become very, very old, and he was about to pass on. And he asked one of his children to take him outside before he passed, and he grabbed 2 handfuls of dirt from this island that he loved so much. and he wanted to die holding on to these handfuls of dirt. So he passed, and he was buried holding on to these handfuls of dirt. He came to heaven, and at the gates, angels came to invite him in, and he was holding on to these handfuls of dirt. And the angels said to him, "You can't come in with the handfuls of dirt. You have to let go." And he said, "I can't let go. This is where all my happiness is." And they said, "Well, we can't take you now then." And the angels left, and he stayed outside wandering. Years went by, and the angels came back again, and they had the same conversation, and he wouldn't let go. And the angels left the same way they had left before. Years went by again. This time, the angels came with one of his granddaughters. And his granddaughter had become, over the passage of time, a very old lady. And when he saw her, he opened up his arms, the dirt fell out of his hands, and he gave her a big hug. And the angel said, "Now you can come in." And when he came in, he found that everything he loved was already there. For us to enter into communion, for us to enter into true meditation, for us to begin to come to know eternity, to come to know our Creator, we have to let go of everything that we hold on to in this world. So we have to create a space within ourselves, here and now, where we are without attachment to all of the things that we are interacting with in this temporary, illusory world. We have to let go of everything we hold on to with our hands, with our mind, with our eyes, with our ears, with our smell. We have to let go of everything. We have to release ourselves from all that we have gathered within this temporary, illusory world, so that we can be free to enter into reality, to enter into truth, to make a connection with truth. And we need to practice this. So we have to stop worrying. We have to stop considering all of the various permutations of what it is that we're doing in the world, and how we're going to accomplish this, and how we're going to accomplish that, and what we're going to do next, and how this is going to turn out, and how we need that to turn out. All of that has to disappear. Everything that we love in the world, we have to give up so that we can love reality. Our love for the world separates us from our love for reality. Our involvement with the world separates us from reality. Our attachment to the world separates us from reality. And as we understand this, we can become more and more free of being held in place by our elemental magnetism to the other elements within the world. You see, there's a part of us, our body, that's made up out of the elements. And these elements are naturally attracted and in a way magnetized to the other elements within the world. So we are constantly being pushed and pulled by these attractions. But to become free, to be able to find eternity, we have to release ourselves from these attractions. When Allah created Adam, he first asked all of the different entities that he created before he created man if they would take on the nur, the light that came from him. Only the earth said that it would take on the light. And God said to the earth, I will let you have it, but I will create man out of you. And it actually will be man that will hold that light, but that man will be created from earth. So Adam was created from earth. And within that earth, God had sent the nur, the light. So man was created with the light in him, with wisdom in him. At the time of that creation, Satan was around. And he was very jealous of this new creation because he saw how much care Allah gave to it and how he had placed it above him. And Satan's arrogance could not stand that something was placed above him. And so Satan, after Adam was created, spit on him. And this landed in the area that's now called the belly button. And that spit contained the venom of Satan. And what is the venom of Satan? It's separation, it's differences, it's all of the qualities that make man think that he is different from other men. It is the qualities that deny unity. It is the qualities that stop people from understanding that all men are created by God and that we all have this unity within us, and we are all within that unity from one mother and father, from one creator, no matter what our color or our race or our language or our religion, we still come from that same source. And before Allah, we are all within that unity and that equality. But Satan, in order to spread differences and to spread disunity and to spread chaos in man and to deny man the ability to understand the light within him and understand the God within him, has tried to bring chaos and confusion into man. So we have to go into that open space of meditation to counteract this confusion, to counteract this chaos, to bring the truth back into us and to relieve ourselves of arrogance and hatred and jealousy and spitefulness and all of the differences that come when we separate ourselves from everyone else as if we were separate from everyone else. So we have to enter into ourselves and look into ourselves and recognize what it is we have in ourselves. Recognize the state of our qualities and the state of our emotional self. What is it that we're thinking about? Are we thinking about the difficulties in our life? Are we thinking about our relationship with God? Are we thinking about others who we think have somehow taken advantage of us? Are we thinking about things that are less than the Creator? Are we thinking about things that are tied to the illusory world? Are we thinking about qualities that are tied to the illusory world? We have to go to a space where we stop those thought patterns and we enter into praise of our Creator, where we enter into a joyous understanding of the love that our Creator has given to us and the love with which He created us. And then we have to enter into a state where we love as the Creator loved. And this is a love that is unconditional. This is a love that is without expectations. This is a love that doesn't need something in return in order to love. Allah created us out of love, and we are supposed to exist in love. And what we notice, what we should notice, is that when that state of love overwhelms our being, we begin to change. Love acts as a counter, as a cure for the venom that Satan spit on Adam. Love is what counteracts it. It's the anti-venom. And love is what brings us to a state of peace and a state of tranquility. And to be able to make our connection with Allah, we have to be in this state of tranquility. Now, many people can be doing the same things, and each of them are doing it in a different way mentally. Each of them are approaching it in a different way mentally, internally. What we need to do is approach things appropriately internally. A man walked over to a place where people were working, and he asked the first man, "What's he doing?" And he said, "I'm breaking big rocks into smaller stones, and it breaks my back, and the heat is terrible, and the work is boring, and I can't stand being here." He walked over a little further down to the next man who was doing the same thing. And he asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm making a living to support my wife and my children. And it's hard work, but it makes me the money I need in order to support my family." He walked over to a third man who was also working with these rocks, and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm building a cathedral." All of them were doing the same thing, but all of them had a different attitude about what it is they were doing. We need to develop transcendent attitudes. We need to develop a way of seeing ourselves and what we do at a higher level. We need to understand the most important work that's been given to us, and we have to take on this work. When? Now. Where? Here. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to do anything extraordinary except sit still and release ourselves of everything that isn't pure. Release ourselves of everything that isn't holy. Release ourselves of all of our attachments to this world. And we have to figure out a way to be able to do that. It is no easier for a king to give up his attachment to his kingdom than it is for a beggar to give up his attachment to his few pennies. There was a beggar who every day would go out to beg, and he was able to get a few grains of rice and a little bit of firewood in order to cook his rice, and that was all he ate. And there was a rumor going around that the king was going to come through the village where this beggar lived. And the beggar thought to himself, you know, if I can put myself on the road where the king is coming, I'm sure the king will be very generous to me, and the king will help me in my difficulty. So he put himself on the road, and the king's entourage came by, and the king stopped, got out of his carriage, and went up to the beggar. And he said to the beggar, "Do you have any rice?" And the beggar said, "I have a little bit." And he said, "Give me some." And the beggar immediately began to think, what does the king need my rice for? Why is the king asking me for something? I'm the one that's in need. What does he need from me? So he counted out 5 grains of rice from the meager amount that he had, and he gave it to the king. Meanwhile, the king went on, and the beggar sat back and was very resentful of the fact that the king had asked him for a portion of his rice. Well, it came evening, and it was time for him to make his little bit of rice to eat. And he pulled his bag out, and he saw that the king had left something in his bag. And he looked, and he saw 5 small pieces of gold. He had gotten a piece of gold for each grain of rice that he had given up. And he began to think to himself, my God, if I would give him all my rice, look at what I could have had. He then understood what the king did for him. As he gave the king gave him back things that were incredibly more valuable. So if we can give up our desires and give them to the king, if we can give up our needs and give them to the king, if we can give up our wants and give them to the king, if we can give up our lust and give them to the king, if we can give up all of the things that we love in this world and give it to our king, the king will return to us gifts of immeasurable value that are way beyond what we give up and way beyond what we can comprehend. And what the king is asking you to give up is your attachment to these things, your need for these things, your absolute dependence on these things. He's not saying, give me your car, but he is saying, give up the need for that car. He's not saying, give me your house, but he's saying, give up the need for the house. He's not saying, give up your wealth, but give up the need for your wealth. Give up the attachment to these things. As we go through this world, we go through with attachments to stuff. And there's 2 types of attachments. There's the type that grips onto everything, and doesn't let go and holds things as if it let go something desperate was going to happen. And there's the kind of involvement where you go along with the flow, and as things come, they come, and as things go, they go. But they don't involve your absolute commitment to them. And this is the meditation we need to do. When we are by ourselves in a space where our mind is free of our interaction with the world, we can be in a space where we give up everything, where our needs disappear, where our desires disappear, where our lusts disappear. And when that happens, truth can enter into us. Reality can enter into us. Allah's qualities can enter into us. And that's when we can be overtaken by love in its unconditional nature, because we no longer are attached to desire and lust. So we're no longer looking for something in return. We're no longer in a quid pro quo situation. In order to give, we need to get. Well, we need to get out of that attitude. We should be able to give without looking for anything in return. And that return will come, because that's the natural way that it happens. And that return is without form. And that which you get that is without form is a greater treasure than anything that you can get that has form. But that only happens when we've released ourselves from the need and the desire for all of the various forms within the world, when we've lost our fascination for all of the various forms within the world, when love can exist for the sake of love alone, when love exists because we know that it comes from Allah, it comes from God, and that's enough reason to love. When we understand that when we place conditions on love, we are creating separations and creating situations which enhance our lust, enhance our desire, and we are loving for a purpose, not for God. We're loving to get something. We need to love not to get something, but to become something other than we are when we are in the midst of lust and desire. When we are in the midst of lust and desire, we are not truth. When we are in the midst of lust and desire, we are not reality. And what we're trying to do is to become reality. And reality has no lust. Reality has no needs, because reality has everything. And it all comes from a source that is not ever in any way diminished, nor can it be diminished, no matter how much it gives. And this is the state that we need to enter into. This is the state that we need to become. And if you can go into a meditative state where you think this way, and where you put out the desire to become this way, these things will begin to occur for you, for me, for all of us. There are many different desires in the world. None of these desires have a cure. But if you can transfer your desire to understand reality, if you can transfer the desire to come to know God, that desire has a cure. So we have to shift our love from the world to the truth, from the world to reality, from the world to God, from form to non-form. We have to do this within ourselves, and we need to set up the laboratory to do this work in. We're talking about alchemy here, the change from lead to gold. So we are talking about the change from animal to insan, and insan kamil, and truth. This change is what needs to occur in us, and we need to actively work on this change. And how do we do it? By sitting still and entering into a state of silence and detachment. And we are capable of doing this. And we have to do it a little bit at a time. You can't expect huge changes to happen for you the first time you sit down, but more and more will happen every time you go into this state of silence, to the point where you are going to want more and more to be in this state of silence, because you will realize that as we detach from all of these worldly things, we detach from our burdens. We detach from the things that weigh us down. We detach from all of the things that make our life difficult. So we have to find this place of detachment. As you get rid of things, things become easier. A man went to his sheikh and said, "The situation in my little house is terrible. We're very poor. I have 6 children, and we live with my in-laws. And there's constant bickering and constant fighting, and it's just terrible all the time." And the sheikh says to him, "How many animals do you have?" He says, "Well, I have a goat, and I have a burro, and I have a cow, and I have some chickens." He says, "Move them in the house with you." And the man goes away and does what the sheikh tells him. He comes back to the sheikh a day or two later and says, "It's unbelievable now. It's worse than it was before." He says, "Well, go back home and take the chickens out of the house." He comes back the next day and he says, "It's a little better now, but the goat is breaking things. The burro is making noise all the time. And to have a cow in the house, it's impossible to keep the house clean." He says, "Well, take the burro out of the house." So he goes back home, takes the burro out of the house, comes back and says, "Well, it's a little less noisy, but the goat is still running into things, and the cow just does what a cow does. It makes it impossible to live there." So he says, "Well, go back home and take the goat out of the house." He does that. He comes back the next day. He says, "I can't live with this cow. The cow goes wherever he wants to, and we can't keep the house clean." He said, "Okay, go home and take the cow out of the house." The next day he comes back and he tells the sheikh, "You know, now that we have all of the animals out of the house, it's really very peaceful in this house." And this is what it's like for us. We are in a situation where we think that things are difficult. Well, the truth is, things are as easy as they can be if we just allow them to be. We have to get all of the animals out of the house, and then we have to learn to get all of the animals inside of ourselves out of ourselves. And as this release takes place, we become clearer and clearer and clearer and more peaceful, more and more at ease, and more content with our situation. So we need a space to go where we can practice being content. We need a space to go where we can practice being at peace. We need a space to go where we can practice having no fears, no involvements, no worries, no attachments. We have to practice doing this. And that's the space that we enter into when we enter into the silence inside of ourselves and learn how to sit still for extended periods of time, releasing ourselves from all of the hypnotisms and magnetisms of the world. May it come to pass that we learn about this space and that this space stays with us and that we find peace in this space and we find our Lord in this space and we transcend into a communion with our Creator so that we know about the truth of who we are and the truth of who our Creator is. May this happen for each and every one of us. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.